They called him Hardrada, the Hard Ruler. A man forged in exile, baptized in fire, and remembered as the last great Viking king. This is not just the story of a king, it's the saga of a warrior who shook the world and nearly ruled it. Harald Sigurdsson was born in 1015, the half-brother of King Olaf II of Norway. At only 15, he fought alongside Olaf at the Battle of Stiklestad, a battle that ended in brutal defeat. Wounded and hunted, Harald escaped eastward with a small band of warriors. He was barely a teenager, but already he had the mind of a king and the soul of a fighter. After fleeing Stiklestad, Harald and his men turned east into the vast lands of Gardarike, today's Russia and Ukraine. Here he found refuge with Prince Yaroslav, the Wise of Kiev, who welcomed the young exile into his court. Harald fought as a mercenary in Yaroslav's service, leading men in battles against rival princes and steppe raiders. It was in these lands that he gathered wealth, forged alliances, and even took a bride, Elisev, daughter of Yaroslav himself. With power, fortune, and a new royal connection, Harald's journey was far from over. Soon, he would look south to the fabled city of Miklagard, Constantinople. His journey had just begun. Harald's path took him to the greatest empire of the time, Byzantium. There, he joined the legendary Varangian Guard, an elite force of Norsemen sworn to protect the emperor. For nearly a decade, Harald fought across the known world, in Sicily, in Bulgaria, in Jerusalem. The sagas tell us he captured more than 80 towns and fortresses in the emperor's name. He crushed rebellions, commanded fleets, and earned riches beyond imagination. They called him Araltes, the thunder from the north. But Harald wanted more than gold. He wanted a crown. In 1045, Harald returned to Norway with wealth and fame. He challenged for the throne, and after tense negotiations and civil war, he seized it. As king, Harald ruled with iron will. He crushed opposition, centralized power, and expanded Norway's influence. To his enemies, he was ruthless. To his allies, a force of stability. He was not just a warrior, he was a poet, a builder, a strategist. But one ambition remained: England. In the autumn of 1066, Harald Hardrada crossed the North Sea with a fleet of over 300 longships and some 10,000 men, one of the largest Viking invasions ever to reach the shores of England. The English crown was in dispute. Harald claimed it through old Viking agreements and seized the chance to conquer. On September 20th, he won a stunning victory at the Battle of Fulford. York surrendered. The dream of conquest seemed within reach. But 5 days later, the English king Harold Godwinson arrived, marching 300 kilometers in just 4 days. On September 25th at Stamford Bridge, the Norwegians were caught off guard. Harald fought bravely, leading from the front. Caught by surprise in the heat of late September, Harald's warriors had left much of their chainmail and heavy arms behind with the fleet at recall. As the English host appeared on the horizon, riders were sent racing to summon reinforcements. But the river was long and the men would never arrive in time. On the field that day, most of the Norse fought lightly armed against a fully prepared Anglo-Saxon army. At Stamford Bridge, the Anglo-Saxons found their advance blocked, not by an army, but by a single man. A lone Viking berserker, axe in hand, held the narrow crossing against wave after wave. For precious moments, one warrior delayed the might of England. Only when a Saxon crept beneath the bridge and thrust a spear upward did the giant finally fall, clearing the way for the slaughter to come. With the lone berserker finally slain, the bridge was lost. The English army surged forward, a flood of steel and fury pouring across to meet the Norsemen waiting on the far side. There, amidst the cries of battle and the clash of blades, Harald Hardrada stood tall, a towering figure who had fought in 100 wars, now facing his greatest and final test. The fighting was savage. The Vikings, though fierce, were outnumbered and pressed hard by the disciplined ranks of the Anglo-Saxons. Harald's voice rang out above the din, urging his men to hold the line, to stand as warriors of the North always had. For a moment it seemed his defiance alone could turn the tide. But fate had other plans. In the chaos, an arrow found its mark, striking Harald in the throat. The great warlord of the North staggered, yet even as the life left him, he clutched his sword, unwilling to yield. Then, before the eyes of friend and foe alike, the last great Viking king fell upon the field. With Harald's death, the spirit of the Norsemen broke. The shield wall collapsed, and the English pressed on relentlessly. What remained of the once mighty Viking host was driven back in ruin. The dream of conquering England had died with Harald Hardrada, and with it, the Viking age drew to a close. After Stamford Bridge, the English allowed the surviving Norsemen to return home. Of the 300 ships Harald sailed out with, only 24 returned to Norway, a devastating loss. Harald's body was taken back to Norway, at least so the sagas say. Tradition holds that he was laid to rest at Nidaros in Trondheim, though the true resting place of the last great Viking king has never been found. His grave, like his legend, remains shrouded in mystery. With Harald's death, the Viking age came to an end. He was the last great warrior king of the Norse, a man whose life was one long campaign. Just weeks after his fall, William of Normandy crossed the Channel and forever changed English history. But had Harald won at Stamford Bridge, the map of Europe might look very different today. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more Viking history. Your support helps bring more legends to life.